In my previous videos, we implemented the domain, application, infrastructure, and the persistence layers of the clean architecture. It's now time to understand the last piece of the clean architecture puzzle, the presentation layer. Presentation layer acts as the front door of the clean architecture application, but developers often misuse it. They start cutting corners and start mixing the business logic in the web APIs and the components available in the presentation layer. Stick around with me and I'm going to explain you how to implement this very crucial outer ring of the clean architecture. I will show you how to implement super thin RESTful web API endpoints and how to set up these endpoints in the application startup. Let's master the presentation layer. Welcome back. My name is Vikas and today we are exclusively focusing on the presentation layer of the clean architecture. We often see the clean architecture shown as concentric circles, domain at the core, application above it, and then the infrastructure and the presentations on the outside. The presentation layer is defined by its responsibility, and that responsibility is to interact with the users of the application. The presentation layer is simply the entry point into your system, and it could be a RESTful web API, a gRPC service, or even a Blazor client application. The core purpose of this layer is to expose the endpoints where external users can interact with the system. When a request comes in, the presentation layer handles it. Then it delegates that request to the appropriate components inside the system for further processing. The key principle here is to keep your API endpoints as thin as possible. We have now established the basic role of the presentation layer, but now let's look at how we physically structure it within our application. When adding the presentation project in the solution, we generally have two approaches. The first approach is all-in-one approach, and in this approach, we create a simple web API project and define all our components and web API endpoints directly inside this project. The second option is a more structured approach, and in this approach, we create a separate project for the presentation layer. In this dedicated presentation project, I introduce a dependency injection class where we can register all the services related to presentation layer. Finally, we can connect this presentation layer with the actual web API project at the application startup time. And if you are following me from my previous videos, you already know that we set up all the layers of the clean architecture application, including the presentation layer, in the program.ts file of my application. This web API project is designated as a starter project of your entire solution. As we now have a separate dedicated presentation project for our application, we need to tell this web API projects where to find the endpoints or web API controllers in our application. And we can do this using this AddApplicationPart method. This method needs the reference of the assembly where your API endpoints are available. In this case, I'm giving it the reference of the assembly where the clubs controller is available. This clubs controller is one of the controller available in my presentation project, and it has all the endpoints related to clubs. Let's walk through this clubs controller step by step. This clubs controller is available in the clubs folder of my presentation layer. This is a standard web API controller and it exposes multiple endpoints related to club entity. This controller has no business logic available in it. Its main responsibility is to receive the HTTP request and delegates the work. At the top, I injected the iMediator interface, which is available in the Mediator library. The main job of this Mediator is to execute the queries and the commands available in the application layer without calling any repositories or services. This keeps our controllers thin and clean. Now let's look at the endpoints one by one. The first endpoint is getAllClubs endpoint, and it has no parameter. The main job of this endpoint is to return the list of clubs. Here I'm calling the getAllClubs query available in the application layer of this League Manager application. Now the controller doesn't know how the clubs are fetched. It just asks for them. Next we have another get endpoint, but this endpoint is receiving a club ID as a parameter from the route. The main job of this endpoint is to return the details of a single club. I'm passing this club ID to a query called getClubsDetails query, and this query will return me the club matching with this club ID. Once I have the club available, I'm returning the club from this endpoint. Next we have an endpoint with a put request. This endpoint receives the club ID from the route and also receives the request object from the body of the request. Inside the method, I map the request to update club command and send it via the Mediator. Next we have an endpoint to create a club. This endpoint is similar to the update club because it also receives the request object from the body of the request. Once again, the controller doesn't know how to create the club. It simply maps the request to a create club command and send this request via the mediator. And finally, we have the delete club endpoint. This endpoint also receives the club ID from the route and simply pass that ID to the delete club command. Now, it is very clear that all these endpoints are simply the entry points, and all the business logic is available in the queries and the commands available in the application layer. This approach keeps your endpoint thin and clean and also make your code more easy to maintain. Let's see some of these endpoints in action via the Postman. The first endpoint I configured in the Postman is get all clubs endpoint, and when I will execute it, it will return me the list of all the clubs available in my database. As you can see, I have a list of all the English Premier League clubs available in the response of this API. Similarly, I also configured an endpoint that will return me a details of a single club. For this endpoint, I need to pass the club ID in the application URL, and when I will execute this endpoint, I will get the details of a single club. In this video, I covered the presentation layer of the clean architecture that acts as the entry point of your application. If you want to learn about the other layers of the clean architecture such as domain, application, infrastructure, or the persistence, you can watch my previous videos where I build all these layers step by step. This was my last video of this League Manager application which we built using the clean architecture. If you have found this video and my complete League Manager application series useful, please smash the like button and also subscribe to my channel for more videos about the clean architecture in the future. Until next time, stay awesome.